You ready? Okay. Well, we're starting back on part 2 of tonight's classes. This is week 7. And as I mentioned before, early on in the first part of the class, that we would take a minute and talk a little bit more about Arianism. I wanted to give you a little bit of, this will be in some notes that will be handed out to you later, but I think it would be helpful to go ahead and mention some things a little bit further as to the belief. This was one of the things that the Council of Nicaea was struggling with, and that is the belief in the Trinity as God is 3 in 1, co-equal, co-eternal, and Arianism where God is eternal yet created the Son and the Holy Spirit. Just a couple of things about it. During the Council of Nicaea, it was called the Trinitarian Controversy, and overall it lasted several centuries. It's named for Arius, and again, he is from Alexandria, Egypt. Arius took the speculations of Origen, which we talked about, we went back and spoke about some of those, and he took them to their next logical conclusion, and that is concerning the begetting of the Son, and how that, well, since the Son was created by the Father, obviously he wasn't eternal, he's not co-equal. Though Arianism is named after Arius, the subject and belief predated Arius. As we mentioned, Origen had some of the beliefs already. Arius only intensified the controversy and carried it to the church-wide audience, which therefore led to it being brought up at the Council of Nicaea. He had those that followed him, and you had others that rejected the doctrine and was on the other side and was battling it out at the Council of Nicaea to decide what was true and what was not true. Arius ended up being condemned at the Council of Nicaea there, and was exiled by Constantine. And after Constantine died, his son Constantinus, who reigned in the east, supported Arianism. It wasn't until 392 that the victory of the Orthodoxy in the Roman Empire was complete. Arianism became the state religion in several countries until as late as the 6th and 7th century. So you have until around 800 some AD that Arianism was the doctrine, and it was especially prevalent in the German tribes. That is, you would have those in the German where present day Germany. Its beliefs, some of its core beliefs, can be found in Unitarianism today. Unitarians and their belief and how they believe that there's only one God, which we believe that, but we believe we have a triune God. Jehovah's Witnesses regard Arius as a forerunner of Charles Russell, the founder of their movement. Understand that they believe, and I'm making sure, I hope I get this right, they believe that that Jesus Christ is not God, that He's created. And so you can see where they would go along with this. A couple of other things that I have here. Arius' teaching reduced the Son to a demigod, and that is there were some afraid that he was ushering in reintroducing polytheism, which of course you have many gods. And this, of course, would undermine the Christian concept of redemption, and since only he who was truly God could redeem and be reconciled to humanity, was through the Godhead. The Council of Nicaea, which condemned Arius as a heretic and issued a creed to safeguard the core Christian belief, was convened to settle the controversy. And so you have Arianism being introduced, and it wasn't until many years. You have, of course, you have many centuries later where it was finally put down and brought into check, and you still have those forms of belief, even into Unitarian theology and their beliefs, and even into the Jehovah's Witnesses, and so that's still out there. Let's skip down to page 56. You can look at the other things that they have there. We have on page 55, the post-Nicene writers. I'm just going to move over that for now. Let's move to page 56, and we'll look at the development of monasticism. Of course, this is the belief. It gets its belief system through asceticism and the belief of monastic living. You have in the asceticism is in the church is advocated by different church leaders. It promoted a hermit lifestyle, cloister life, monastic orders. The spread of this was with men such as Origen, Augustine of Hippo, and Jerome promoted this form of life as a higher form of Christian service. So you have these men that believe that by living a hermit style of life, living a monastic lifestyle, that it brought them closer to God, and that they were better for Christian service for this type of life. All these would have lived a life without a family, without a wife and children, and they believed that it brought them closer to the Lord. It began and developed first in Egypt. So remember, we were talked about some of the bishops and the writers there in Alexandria. Many of them believed this type of system. Hermits became so numerous in the desert that they joined together in cloisters of when they were living. Monasteries would develop. Yep. So they would come together in a monastery and would live together. You have several named here. Pachomus, Saint Basile, and Saint Benedict developed rules for the monasteries. Saint Basile of Cappadocia brought monastic life to Asia Minor in the 4th century. Saint Martin of Tours founded a monastery in Gaul about 367 A.D. Monasticism became very important in the British Isles in the 5th, 6th, and 7th centuries. Ireland, Britain, and England. Some of those named here, you have Antony the Hermit from 250 to 355 A.D. This is the same man that had the life of St. Anthony written. Began to practice asceticism at 20, ate a meal of bread and salt once a day. That was, you can imagine after several weeks even, that would... At 35, he went to live in solitude at a mountain on the Nile. He later organized the monastic life of the hermits who imitated him. And as I was mentioning earlier, he imagined the devil appearing to him in many forms. So you have a man that is having visions that sets up a monastic lifestyle for others to follow, that's having visions of the devil and devils chasing him. In one account, in the story here, the life of Antony, you have, reading a little bit about it, you have where several devils are torturing him in the desert. You have another where he meets a saint in the desert and talks with him. He gets, what's interesting is when the devil appears to him, or several devils, they try to tempt him to sin. Now, what does that sound? Doesn't that sound familiar? In one case, he says that the devil appeared to him in the desert with a platter of silver coins and enticing him to take them. what I thought was interesting is, well, if he's in the desert, what's he going to do with the silver coins?
Was it 30?
I just read there was silver coins on a platter, but it makes you wonder, right? But he appeared to him and was trying to tempt him to take the coins. On another occasion, gold coins were set out, and the way he fled the temptation is he threw these gold coins into a fire to get rid of them. And so you have a man like this setting up a monastic lifestyle for others. Simon, yes, sir.
Well, it says here he lived from 250 to 355, 105 years old. That must have been some good bread and salt.
Simeon the Stylite, you have 390 to 459 AD. He sought meditation and closeness to God by sitting on top of a stone pillar. He ate, slept, and prayed and meditated on top of these pillars. The fourth pillar he used was about 40 feet high and only 3 feet in diameter at the top. And sat on top of this pillar for 20 years until his death. And all of this was to get closer to God. Just an insane way of thinking that you're going to get a higher level of being with God or higher level of righteousness. But understand that this came from those that would also influence with Roman Catholicism and others, that you have to do this penance, you have to do these things to be righteous. So they wanted to be righteous, so let's be a hermit. Let's sit on top of a pillar for 20 years. All in the name of being righteous and finding their way to be closer to God. Pacormus lived in the early 4th century in Egypt. A soldier in his youth lived for 12 years with an old hermit. Organized a society of monks on an island in the Nile which reached membership of 3,000 in his lifetime. Ended up dividing the monks into 24 classes according to spiritual advancement. They supported themselves by various kinds of labor, agriculture, shipbuilding, and etc. Had all things common and carried out special hours of devotion. So again, you see these. He divided them in 24 classes according to spiritual advancement. Again, all in the name of thinking that you have this higher spirituality because of what you do and how your self-denial of the world. And this is our last one, and this takes us to the end of the notes. And I'm going to let you all go early tonight, and then we'll get into further church history next week. But Benedict of Nursia died about 547 AD. He founded the monastic order of the Benedictines in 529. He created the rule of Saint Benedict, which became the chief rule of Western monasticism. His first monastery was Monte Cassino, was a converted temple of Apollos on a 1,700-foot high hill in central Italy. Early Benedictines included St. Augustine of Canterbury, St. Boniface, and Pope Gregory I. So all these men trying to get a closer walk with God. A closer walk with God. So how you do that is it's an amazing thing that someone would put themselves on a pillar for 20 years thinking they're getting closer to God. In reality, how we get close to God is through His Word and living a holy life for Him. And so, again, an amazing thing. Let's go ahead and break there, and then we'll come back to and do church history next week.